You know that classic comic book origin story, right? A totally normal person survives some freak, incredibly dangerous accident, and boom, instead of a tragedy, they emerge completely transformed with absolutely unbelievable abilities. Sounds like pure Hollywood fiction. But in this explainer, we're going to look at something genuinely wild. We're diving into scientifically documented medical anomalies that mirror those exact fictional storylines. Honestly, it's going to completely shift how you understand the limits of the human body. We're looking at real people whose biology adapted in ways that seem literally straight out of a comic book. Okay, let's dive into this. Can a deadly accident actually create real-life superpowers? Normally, when someone goes through devastating physical trauma, like, say, a horrific car crash or a direct lightning strike, the outcome is exactly what you'd expect. It's tragic. But here's the thing. The human body is this miraculous, wildly unpredictable machine. In some extremely rare, documented cases, surviving an unsurvivable event has unexpectedly unlocked incredible human abilities. We're talking about rewiring a person's biological programming from the ground up. Section 1. Rewiring the brain. When trauma unlocks new abilities. Let's look at what happens when extreme physical trauma forces the human brain to just completely reorganize its internal hardware. We have to start with the amygdala. This is a tiny almond-shaped cluster in your brain that handles our primal emotions, mostly fear. It's literally our evolutionary alarm system designed to keep us alive. But what if it's just gone? Meet Jody Smith. Jody had incredibly severe epilepsy, and when standard medications failed, doctors suggested a really radical surgery. They went in and actually removed parts of his brain, specifically his amygdala and his hippocampus. And by doing that, they essentially deleted his biological capacity to feel primal fear. So, how does that actually play out in the real world? Well, Jody's lack of fear translates into this sort of behavioral invulnerability. Get this, he once walked completely unbothered right through a group of guys who were trying to mug him. His absolute zero fear response completely threw them off, and they literally just left him alone. He can casually stroll along the absolute edge of a sheer cliff, and his heart rate doesn't even spike. Plus, he's highly socially active and totally fearless in conversation. But here is the fascinating takeaway. He's not actually reckless. He still retains rational caution. If someone points a weapon at him, his logic says, okay, that's dangerous, but he never feels that rising panic in his chest. His brain just operates purely on logic, bypassing panic entirely. And this brilliantly illustrates our next incredible anomaly. Back in 2009, a man named Alan Curtis was in a horrific cycling accident. He broke his skull and suffered severe brainstem damage. Now, the accident was brutal, but the aftermath was absolutely astonishing. The trauma severed or severely damaged his spinal thalamic pathways. Basically, this completely blocked all pain and temperature signals from reaching the sensory part of his brain, but only for half of his body. He essentially became a half-human shield. You could put his right hand in boiling oil, and he simply wouldn't register the pain. But sometimes the rewiring is strictly cognitive. Imagine if you could just memorize massive sequences of numbers in an instant. Well, that became the everyday reality for Jim Corallo. Jim survived a massive, incredibly traumatic car crash. And he didn't just wake up extremely lucky to be alive, he woke up with this sudden, totally inexplicable ability to instantly memorize huge blocks of numbers. We're talking complex credit card numbers, phone numbers, and even the first 200 digits of pi. And he could do it just by glancing at them once. The medical science behind Jim's sudden genius is a condition known as Savant syndrome, specifically acquired Savant syndrome. What happens here is that severe damage to the left side of the brain basically forces it to release its normal inhibitions. This allows the right brain to overcompensate, unlocking extraordinary hidden computing skills. It's absolutely wild to think about, right? What kind of incredible hidden computing powers might your brain or my brain be concealing right now underneath all those normal inhibitions? Let's move on to Section 2. Harnessing high voltage, surviving the unsurvivable shock. We've just seen the crazy effects of blunt physical impact. But what happens when the trauma isn't physical at all, but electrical? What happens when a human body is subjected to a massive surge of pure electrical energy? This narrative pivot brings us to some of the most mind-blowing survivors on the planet. 300 million. That huge number is the estimated voltage of a single average lightning strike. Most people, understandably, do not survive even one of those. But then there's Roy Sullivan. They called him the human lightning rod, and for good reason. He survived being struck by lightning not once, not twice, but 7 consecutive times over his life. That is over 2 billion volts of electricity coursing through a human body, and he lived to tell the tale, exhibiting an extreme, almost supernatural electrical resistance. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the resistance we're talking about. For a normal, fully grown human, a shock of just 50 volts can be a lethal dose, depending on the current. But then we have Slavisa Pajkic, famously known as the Battery Man. His biological resistance is so off the charts that his body can withstand and conduct a recorded 20,000 volts of electricity. And he doesn't even break a sweat. And he doesn't just survive it, he literally harnesses it for entertainment. His party tricks are legendary. He's even showcased them on France's Got Talent. We're talking about a guy who's cooked a hot dog using high voltage conducted directly through his bare hands. He's boiled water, powered a light bulb just by holding it in his mouth, and he's even lit a fire using his own head. I mean, it looks exactly like pure magic. But why does this happen? The biological reality behind the Battery Man's powers is that Slavisa actually lacks sweat and salivary glands. This gives him incredibly, extremely dry skin. And since moisture is a primary conductor for electricity on the human body, his totally dry skin acts as this incredible superhuman insulator. It creates a margin of electrical resistance that completely outpaces normal human capability. Then we have the completely bizarre case of Nikolai Kryaglachenko, often dubbed Magneto Boy. He leaned against a light post that had some faulty wiring and took a massive electrical shock. But when he woke up, he found he had seemingly become a human magnet, attracting coins, spoons, ladles, you name it, right to his body. Now, I do have to point out that biologists are highly skeptical of this, stating the human body simply cannot become magnetized from an electric shock. But honestly, whether it's a true magnetic anomaly or just an incredible party trick involving skin friction, the mere fact that he walked away from that kind of massive shock is a superpower all in its own.
Which brings us to Section 3, Bionic Super Strength, Engineering Beyond Human Limits.
Sometimes biological rewiring just isn't enough, and that's when human ingenuity and sheer engineering willpower step in. Consider the truly incredible story of Sebastian Gallegos. He's a dad who lost his arm to an IED blast while out on patrol. When he got home, the standard medical prosthetic he was issued could only lift about 3 to 5 pounds. It literally broke just from him trying to carry some groceries into the house. Totally frustrated by those limits, he teamed up with an engineer friend to build an upgrade. And wow, what an upgrade. They built a custom arm that can lift up to 400 pounds. That is just a staggering leap in capacity. The really amazing part is how they pulled this off. They completely bypassed standard corporate medical limitations and built this new prosthetic out of aerospace-grade aluminum and carbon fiber. Sebastian essentially turned himself into a real-life winter soldier. This arm is legitimately cutting-edge technology, and it's so incredibly strong that, in theory, it could easily crush a human skull. It just goes to show that sometimes real-world superpowers are built, not born. And this leads us to our core takeaway for today: the human resilience, the ultimate superpower. Whether we're talking about profound physical trauma, completely rewiring the brain, surviving massive, deadly electrical currents, or using pure ingenuity to rebuild a shattered body with aerospace parts, these stories prove one fundamental truth: the human body and the human spirit are just unbelievably adaptable. So I want to leave you with this final, absolutely fascinating thought. If a deadly accident has the power to completely rewrite human biology, effectively deleting fear, turning off pain, or unlocking genius-level mathematics, what kind of incredible powers is your brain currently hiding from you right now, just waiting to be unlocked? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the limits of what's possible.